Hi guys! I am still typing up my little notes of what I want to cover today. I'm so happy to be here again. Thanks for having me, Gretchen, and the 3DT gang.
Thank you.
Um, Today we're going to talk about breathing. And I am, in addition to being a voice teacher, I am a NDH breathing coordination practitioner. I actually hold the honor of being the only advanced practitioner in North America, possibly in this whole side of the world. I'm not sure if there's one in South America or not. So that's kind of cool and fun. And I wanted to give you just a little bit of background about what MDH is before we launch into breathing. Not everything that I teach you today is MDH breathing coordination in its origin, but a large quantity of it is. So I thought it would be really important for you to know where the roots of this come from. And please, please, please write down all your questions as we go because I am planning to leave plenty of time at the end to answer your questions because breathing is one of those subjects that is so highly individual and highly mysterious in many ways, especially when you are a professional breather. If you are a singer, an actor, a teacher, a dancer, you are a professional breather. And there are all sorts of ways that your breath can either assist or get in the way of your activities. So we're going to explore some of those things today. So just a little bit about MDH breathing coordination. M stands for Martin, which is Lynn Martin. She is a retired professor from NYU in the dance department. She was the professor for functional anatomy for dancers. The DH stands for DeHaas. That's my other teacher, Robin DeHaas, who is in Lausanne, Switzerland, and he is my trainer in MDH breathing coordination. And the two of them together created MDH breathing coordination, which is a direct descendant philosophically from Carl Stau. That's spelled Stough. If you're interested in doing a little bit of a history deep dive, you can find Carl Stau online. He was a breathing coordination pioneer from the 1950s, 1960s, and he was very active until his death in the early 2000s. Lynn Martin mentored with him for many, many, many years. So I would consider myself a direct breathing descendant of Carl Stau. And his work is highly significant because he's the one that actually coined the phrase breathing coordination. And he had many very, very significant discoveries in that each person's breathing mechanism is unique and your coordination is individual to you. So a one size fits all breathing method doesn't work. So we can say, take a deep breath, support from the diaphragm. This means nothing. It really is vague and usually confusing because I'm like, well, don't I have to breathe from the diaphragm in order to breathe? What is this support you speak of? It becomes very, very confusing. And so he's the one that realized that every person is very unique. And he was a choir director who, through some very interesting connections in his life, got to work with people with breathing disorders, end stage emphysema patients. And he actually had phenomenal results. These people that they thought were dying ended up recovering enough breathing function that they could go home and live a normal life. And they died of something else many, many years later. He also had the good fortune of working with the Mexico City 1968, was it 1968? Mexico City track team, US track team, and it was at altitude. His team that he worked with was the only team at those games that did not have to take supplementary oxygen. They won a huge number, like a record number of gold medals and set a bunch of world records. So he's the real deal. And so his teaching is embodied through MDH breathing coordination today. So that's just a very, very brief nutshell. Feel free to go down the Google rabbit hole if you're interested in learning more about Carl Stau and Robin DeHaas and Lynn Martin and all the wonderful things that they've brought to the world in terms of breathing. So that being said, we are going to start with some very basic breathing exercises. Now, remember, I said everyone's breathing is highly individual. And yet here I am teaching a group of people I cannot see breathing exercises. So please remember that, and know that if as I'm showing you these things, you do not feel a difference or it's confusing to you, that's okay. And it means that it's proving my point that it's highly individual. And so you may have questions, specific questions, and we'll try to leave some time at the end so that I can answer as many as possible. And if this is something that you feel is, like, if I'm speaking directly to you right now and you feel like you need to work on your breath, please reach out to me. Maybe Gretchen, can you post my information? They're welcome to email me or reach out on social media. I'm horrible about get back to people on social media. I need to do better about that, but in my heart, I mean to. I'm just not good at it because mama's busy. I got 4 kids and like 6 jobs. It's awesome.
Crystal, sorry to interrupt you. We actually have a question in the chat. If yeah, okay, cool. So Gabrielle says, I'm a yoga and Reiki instructor and have been interested in getting a certification in breathing. I've taken mindfulness classes, but want something more substantial to integrate into my practice. Any resource for places to start, especially right now during quarantine? Online classes, coaching, certifications, much appreciated.
I don't know of any online certifications in breathing. I know that Robin is starting my teacher Robin is starting a new certification course in Switzerland. He's planning to start it this fall. I'm not sure how he's going to do that, but that is an in-person class in Switzerland, and the website for that is breathingcoordination.ch because it's a Swiss site and it is in English and French. So yeah, that's what I would recommend. I don't know of any other specific breathing coordination certification courses. The only one I know of is the one that I've done, and it's wonderful. I love it.
And I'm posting her Instagram handle, and also you can find it on Facebook, which is Crystal Voice Studio, and that's going to be in the chat if you
yes,
like that.
And my website, you can contact me through my website as well, which is also crystalvoicestudio.com. I try to keep it consistent. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we are going to sigh. And it can be an audible sigh or it can be a silent sigh. But I want everybody to just take a big old sigh of relief. And hopefully you felt something in your rib cage area. Hopefully you felt something relax, like a letting go sensation. If you did, that's a good sign. If your ribs feel stuck, that means we have more work to do. And you may not feel anything, and that also signals that you may have some more awareness work to do. If you're like, I can't tell what's happening in my ribs, then we might have some more work to do to build sensory understanding. Another colleague of mine, I just read his email today. I call it sorting sensations. He calls it cataloging sensations, where you learn to be able to sort and identify the different feelings that you feel in your body as you're doing these things and what they mean, and then how to train your body appropriately based on the sensations that you feel and can identify. So let's sigh one more time, and I want you to turn your awareness. When I work with kids, I say use your inside eyes, and I want you to pay attention to this area, maybe up into your armpits and up into your back as you exhale on a nice long sigh. And hopefully you felt a little bit more of that sensation of release or hanging. If your ribs are holding and tight, now we're going to add another step. And actually, those of you, even if you did feel your ribs release, there is more available to you. That is something we say a lot in breathing coordination. There is always more available to you, and we want it all. So we always go seeking more release, more freedom, more efficiency, more cooperation between all the body parts. So this time everybody's going to make a fist. We're going to clench a fist, and I want you to pay attention to what your fist, the sensations that you feel in your fist of a contraction. It might feel hot. It might feel tight. It might feel heavy. It might feel stuck. Whatever you can catalog in your mind. Now, I want you to release the fist and catalog those sensations, sort those sensations. My hand feels like it's sinking. It feels warm. It feels loose. It feels floppy. Those are the sensations that come to mind for me. Your words probably are slightly different, and they should be. different because you are different than me. So we're gonna do that one more time. Clench the fist. Identify all the sensations you feel. And release the fist, noticing all of those sensations. Ooh, my hands are getting old. Some of my joints are like, they don't want to let go. I'm going to switch hands. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to do this again, and this time you're going to try to connect the sensations you feel in your fist to your rib cage. Okay, so if you want to actively squeeze your ribs as if somebody's going to poke you in the ribs, they're coming at you with their finger, and you want to squeeze your ribs because you don't want to get poked in the ribs, that's okay. But you don't have to do that step if you don't want to. Then as you release the fist, you're going to also talk to your ribs. We talk to our body parts a lot in breathing. And you're going to talk to your ribs and you're say, hey, ribs, do what my hand's doing. And we're hopeful that you'll be able to feel the same sensations in your ribs that you feel in your hand. Okay, so here we go. Everybody clench. Identify those same sensations and release. And again, if you cannot feel this, if you cannot connect what you're feeling here to here, that means that you have some stuff that you can work on. And that's not a negative, that's a positive. It's like, oh, wow, that's something that I can improve on. That's going to actually help my breathing. Sweet, I can do that. Okay, so now that we're going to do that one more time, and then I'm going to give you an exercise that goes with this. So clench the fist, squeeze the ribs if you want. Squeezing these ribs, by the way, is not called support. That is something different. And release. Good. Now what we're going to do is I want you to start with a loosely clenched fist, and as you sigh, you're going to open your fist and you're going to try to actively release the ribs like you just did. So we're not starting from a fully clenched position. My hand has, like, I have no fingernail markings from my fingers right now, as I'm just loosely holding my wrist, my hand, and then I'm going to release it as I sigh, sending a very strong message to my ribs. Please do the same thing as my hands. Okay, so here we go. Ready, and sigh. And hopefully you could feel a little bit in your ribs that they're starting to move and kind of hang and droop down. This time, whatever little kernel of sensation that you were able to find, ask it to spread. Is this best to do standing or sitting? It's actually best to do lying down, but if you cannot lie down, sit for now. If you're standing or sitting, your postural muscles are somewhat involved and they can get in the way. And one of the most common issues that I see in my studio is people's rib muscles, their intercostals, have the mistaken idea that they are postural, that they are in charge of helping hold you upright. And so if you're standing and you're trying to release your rib muscles, they can't do it because they're like, I'm holding you upright. And then that's another thing that we have to work on, is getting the rib muscles to understand what their true job is in your life, which is not to hold you up or to hold you together. A lot of people's rib muscles try to hold them together. Mine did. It's like, I got you. It's okay. We're going to get through. And that's not optimal or efficient. My ribs, they were tired from holding me all those years. Okay, so now we're going to do this one more time. Those of you that were standing and just sat down, hopefully you'll be able to feel it's a little bit easier. And this time we're going to ask that sensation to spread. So wherever you felt it, if you felt it a little bit in the sides, that's usually where people feel it first. Ask if it can spread into the front, up into your armpits, around into the back as you sigh. So loose fist and sigh. And then we're going to do it one more time. And now we're going to see if it can just permeate all the different layers of your body. So now it's moved all the way around, all the way up, and now it's all the way in. Everything is letting go. Loose fist, and one more. So hopefully now you're feeling a little looser, a little more jiggly. The ribs are feeling a little more free. Okay, so now we're going to actually work on a couple little exercises specifically for singers. I have kind of three categories I wanted to briefly touch on today. And I mean, like everything, you know, Gretchen, you've been here for a few weeks with me now. I have a lot of words and I have a lot of things to share, and I can't possibly fit them all into a 50-minute class. So we're just scratching the surface. If this is super interesting to you, please reach out to me because I love to geek out with people that like to improve their breath. Okay? So what we're going to do right now is I want everyone to, if you have access to a straw, I should have put this in the thing. If you have access to a straw in some sort, I want you to go find it. It can be a big straw, it can be a little straw, it can be a straw in a bottle. There they go, there they go, there they go. How's it going?
Doing great.
Let me know when they're back.
Okay, yeah, I'm seeing more people coming back.
It's a scavenger hunt. Next, come back with a toilet paper roll. No, I'm kidding. I'm trying to see who all I know here. Diane. Oh, who remembers Romper Room? Do you remember Romper Room? I see Julie. I see Maureen. I see Diane. Well, I don't see Diane, but I see her tile. I see Courtney. Oh, Courtney. That's Romper Room. She looked through a big giant looking glass. That's all I remember. I watched it like 3 times. I was more of a Captain Kangaroo kind of girl. Captain Kangaroo! Okay, we're back. We have straws. If you do not have access to a straw, you can do the same thing by creating what they call semi-occlusion. In the world of voice science, they call it semi-occlusion by using your tongue to create sort of an S, like a hiss. So we can do the same thing. I prefer the straw because the straw is going to create less potential for tension in your tongue, lips, and jaw, okay? So for singers, one of the biggest struggles that we have for singers is this thing called a slow and steady outflow of air. We want our airflow to be steady. We don't want it to be, you know, like my mom on the gas pedal like this. I'm like, Mom, you're good. That's the way she drives. She always has. It's worse now that she's older. We want to keep a slow and steady foot on the gas all the time. So if you have a big straw, you're going to take your finger and you're going to somewhat cover the end. If you have a little straw, you do not need to cover the end. But what we're going to do is with our now fabulously loose and released ribs as best they can, you're going to exhale slow and steady through the straw as long as you possibly can comfortably. Okay? We're just going to do that one time. Ready to go. And I know some people are still going. I'm going to start talking. At some point, and if you want to raise your hand, because I'm going to go through a list of things you may have felt. Were you, did anybody feel panicky at some point? Like everybody's like, ha, 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 I got to breathe. Did anybody feel their abdominal muscles try to clench? Yeah? Did anybody feel like they were suffocating at any point? I get all of those still sometimes. This is a really good way to just monitor and see where you're at in your breath function. If it's hard for you to do this for more than 10 or 15 seconds, then that means that you have some things that are maybe holding, or you may not be used to exhaling fully. So this is a really good exercise. This is part 1, by the way, of how to breathe easier with your COVID mask. Is anybody struggling with being able to breathe with your mask on? Yeah, so this is part 1 of that, and we're going to explain that in just a couple minutes, okay? Now what I want to do, when Anda's closed a big one, it just stops. Yeah, you don't want to close it all the way. But you're trying to make it a smaller opening, so you somewhat close it. Your finger just kind of blocks a little bit. Hopefully that answers the question, right? And you can, if you are really struggling with a little straw, if you have the little straw and you're struggling, then you can go to the big straw and little by little you semi-occlude it more. You block it off a little bit more until just a little float is left. So now this is an exercise that I do with my singers all the time, where I play the song and they exhale through the straw. They don't even sing. So literally they're listening and they're imagining themselves singing the song as they are exhaling through the straw. And it's a little bit of a mind trip because you'll find yourself like gasping for breath and you're like, why am I freaking out right now? It's a really interesting conversation, sometimes dysfunctional conversation between your brain and your breathing system. So this is a really simple exercise that you can do to just check and see what's happening when I'm singing. And you may realize your body's really trying to take a much larger breath than it needs, or it's trying to push way more air out than it needs. What you're doing when you exhale through the straw, that's about what you need for singing. It's just going to be, the contents are just going to be under higher pressure, if that makes sense. And that's another class for another day. So if you had any of those confusing or upsetting sensations of feeling suffocated, or your abs clenching, or you're feeling maybe your ribs couldn't move, or confusion, like I was getting a lot of things that my body was saying, I don't know what to do. Is it okay if I move? Is it okay if I engage? Am I supposed to not move? Am I supposed to hold? Then I want to just really briefly go over what each group of muscles are supposed to do. And this is a breathing coordination principle. So, I'm just scratching the surface. I don't want anybody to think that this is like fully comprehensive in any way. But if you had a lot of confusion in your body, like you had a big giant imaginary question mark going on down here, then this might at least point you in the right direction. So as you exhale, your ribs are supposed to move. And they hinge in the back, their joints in the back, and then they circle around to the front. In the neutral position, they should be at a diagonal. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale. I think of them as my angel wings. It is okay for them to do this even when you are singing. If you have ever been told by a teacher of singing, get your ribs out and keep them out, that is not scientifically accurate of what is supposed to happen in a breath cycle. I do not teach that. I do not advocate it. However, when you are singing, remember I said it's happening, the air is more pressurized. So the rib movement on the exhale will happen much more slowly. Okay? So if a teacher of singing has said, get your ribs out and keep your ribs out, it's because your ribs perhaps were moving too fast. They may or may not have known this. They may or may not have been trying to just put it in words that you understood. So I'm not saying that they didn't know what they were talking about. I'm just saying that's not scientifically accurate of what happens in the breath cycle. Okay? So yes, ribs up on the inhale, ribs down on the exhale. And your shoulders will ride your ribs, and you have ribs up here. So when your ribs come up, your shoulders will slightly rise. It is okay. What we don't want is for the shoulders to drive the boat, right? But when I inhale and my ribs lift, I don't know if you can see with my gigantic nest of hair, my shoulders are slightly moving when I inhale. But no one would ever say that they are in charge of my breath. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, because of the way that the diaphragm moves, and we'll review that really, really quickly, in its resting position, it is a dome. This is my diaphragm. In a resting position, it's like this. When you inhale, the fibers are going to shorten and contract and come downward like this. So exhale, inhale. That's your diaphragm. And then that creates the partial vacuum in your lungs, which then allows the air to come in. So when that is happening, when the diaphragm is in its downward flattened-like position, it compresses all of your abdominal organs, your viscera. That is why you should feel a little bit of abdominal expansion, because your guts are getting squished when you inhale. If you have a very rigid abdominal wall, this is not going to work well for you. So the abdominal wall must be flexible, it must be mobile, and it must be willing to move outward a little bit everywhere. Okay, so those are the mechanics. As the diaphragm comes down, the abdominal wall is going to move outward, and I advocate a little bit everywhere. Okay, so a little bit everywhere expansion on the inhale. The ribs are swinging up as the diaphragm is coming down. And then everything reverses on the exhale. Diaphragm moves back up, ribs move back down, abdominal organs are moving back in to the abdominal cavity. Therefore, the abdominal muscles are going to gently follow. I call, instead of breath support, I call it organ support. These guys down here, the muscles, it's like they're hugging your organs going, it's okay, we got you, as the organs go on their journey up and down and in and out, because the organs just get pushed around. So you are actually creating an organ massage if you're breathing correctly. It's fabulous for your digestion. I have a story I can tell you, but I won't because we'll run out of time, about digestion and breathing coordination. So anyway, let's do this exhale through the straw one more time and see if you can notice any of those body movements, body parts moving in the way that I just described. Okay, so here we go. And notice I'm focusing more on the exhale. There's a reason for that. So exhale through the straw. And I'm going to talk while you guys keep breathing, allowing your ribs, inviting your ribs to swing downward like your little angel wings. You may feel your abdominal wall drifting in slightly, and that's okay too. Then when you get to the end of the exhale, allow your abdominal wall to move out a little bit everywhere. From sternum to pubic bone, it can move out a little bit everywhere. Equal distribution is the name of the game. All the way around into the sides and into the back, you'll feel expansion. And we'll do that one more time. You may feel your shoulders riding your ribs. And so they might be going lower and lower and lower as you exhale. But they're not pushing your ribs down. They're riding the ribs. Then on the inhale, let the straw come out of your mouth. And hopefully you'll feel that the ribs are kind of spring-loaded and they just bounce back up. And hey, look, you've got a lot of air in your lungs as you move the abdominal wall outward and let the ribs spring back up. How's it feel? Does anybody have any questions about this? Questions? Okay, I'm going to move on.
Does it matter what size straw you have?
If you have the larger straw, that is not going to be, that would be like the bunny slopes in skiing. The smaller straw is more simulating what happens during singing. It has more resistance to the outflow of air. So if you have the larger straw, I do recommend covering the end of it, maybe 70% with your finger. Let's see if I can get up here so you can see it. So this is me with my finger all the way over the end, and now I've moved it to the side, which you probably can't even see, but there is a little like escape hole there that the air can come through. The other way that you can practice this, and I highly recommend it, is to put this in a glass of water. And you can play around with different depths of water, which is going to give you different resistance pressures. That's really the best way of simulating the pressure changes that happen when we sing. I have a whole straw in water protocol that I do with my singers, and it's super fun and effective. Okay, so now we are going to, I'm going to give you one little thing that you can do that's going to help you breathe easier in your mask. This is part 2 of the mask. So if you are struggling with breathing in your COVID mask, there's no research that is, to my knowledge, that's been released to date. So I'm drawing on my understanding of the subject and other experts. I'm connecting the dots. So we'll probably hear more about this in the next few weeks. I might be the first one to talk about it. I have no idea. So there's 2 different things. When you're breathing through a mask, you are dealing with a higher level of CO2. Everybody understands there's an exchange of CO2 and oxygen when you breathe. So when you have the mask, you are dealing with a higher level of CO2. And most of us in today's society have a very low tolerance for CO2. So you have to build up a tolerance for CO2. So if you're feeling panicky in your mask and suffocating, it is probably, that is a component, that you have a low tolerance for CO2. So the best strategy to build up your CO2 tolerance is to exhale longer than you inhale. And you want to extend your exhale as long as possible. So there's this idea, it's called box breathing. Has anybody heard of box breathing? Some people have. I highly recommend just start doing it now. I think I did it in one of my other classes. The people that I learned about CO2 tolerance training is, they're called Power Speed Endurance is their website. So I don't know, Gretchen, can you drop that in there? powerspeedendurance.com. And then you can follow them on Instagram too. And then the other organization that you should follow is HHP, Health and Human Performance Foundation, HHP Foundation. Yeah, the microfiber cloths. Oh, that's good. Do they filter as well though? The microfiber? I don't know if they filter as well.
Did a study and they said it's 40% effective, so it's much higher than the other ones and it's more breathable. It's from the military. The Army did tests.
It's 40% effective? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I think that the highest effectiveness is the 600 thread count plus chiffon. It's like 99.8. It like rivals the N95s. But if you don't need that, then do the microfiber. But if you're high risk or you're around people that are high risk, and I'm not going to moralize this at all. Everybody has their own stance on where they're at with the masks. If you feel like you need to have the highest quality mask and you're doing the 600 thread count masks, they're harder to breathe through. The higher the level of filtration, the less breathable they are, typically is what all the studies are showing. So, or if you have to breathe through an N95 because you're medical, you know, or first responder or something. But it's definitely a trick to do that. So we have to build up a tolerance to CO2, and the box breathing helps you do that. I don't know if we're going to have time, but Gretchen, can you remind me if you have time at the end to come back and I'll actually lead you through box breathing? But that is easily accessible exercise that you can find on the internet. Do box breathing.
So we're at 12 minutes right now.
Okay, so that's part one. You have to build up your CO2 tolerance. Part two is you are inhaling and exhaling against resistance. So you have to do resistance training for your inhalation and your exhalation musculature. Guess what? This tool is the best thing you can do. And you do it a couple minutes a day, a couple minutes at a time throughout the day. Only do what your body will accept. If you are working to the point where you're literally like on the verge of having a panic attack, you've gone too far. But if you just do a little bit at a time, today do 2 minutes 3 times a day. Tomorrow do 2 minutes 4 times a day. Then the third day, maybe do 3 minutes 3 times a day, and then 3 minutes 4 times a day. Does that make sense? And you build up, it's literally, you have to strengthen the inhalation muscles. And what I've found, because I've played around a little bit, if I do not do my rib movement, I get worn out and panicky fast. If I actively engage the rib muscles, like I was just teaching you guys, as I'm inhaling and exhaling, I stay calm and I'm walking around Target and, you know, doing what I have to do. Because it's also easier to sit and breathe in a mask than to walk around, because your heart rate gets up, your cardio engages a little bit more. So now what we're going to do is we're going to inhale and exhale through the straw. Okay, so everybody take an inhale through your straw. If you have the big straw, you're going to somewhat cover, maybe 70% cover. And we're just going to do one inhale and one exhale, and then we're going to sort through some of the sensations that we felt. Okay, ready, go. All right. We felt a lot of stuff, didn't we? Was it challenging?
My lips started to hurt.
Your lips started to hurt? That's a different issue, I think.
Yeah.
What else did we feel? Was it challenging? It was very challenging, very tight in my throat. Yeah. Then you may want to unblock your straw a little bit more. As I did that, I'm like, this little red straw, that's no joke, man. I want to go to the bigger straw. And I want to block it less. And then you increase the challenge. But the trick is we want to feel the air without restriction first, breathing easily, feeling the throat being nice and open, because these muscles here, they're not going to help us get air in if they squeeze at all. So practice without the constriction in your throat. Then you add the straw, and then you cover the end of the straw a little bit, and then a little bit more, and then a little bit more. Some chest tension, and especially squeeze at the end in the ribs. Yes. So this is the strategy, you guys. Wherever you were at, if it was easy for you, good for you. If it was challenging for you, you want to back up to the point where breathing is easy. So if you have to go all the way back to no straw in my mouth, I'm sitting here, I'm unclenching my ribs as I exhale. Then maybe you go to pursed lips, which is just a little bit of resistance. Do that for 2 minutes. If you get panicky at any point, you are not ready to move on. The other thing is when you are breathing through pursed lips, you're going to have the tendency, or through the straw, you're going to have the tendency for these muscles to try to engage like that. And remember, we don't want this driving the boat. We want the ribs swinging out and the abdominal expansion below. The other thing you can do if breathing through the mouth with any type of occlusion is stressful for you, practice through your nose. And if you do, that's part of the box breathing protocol, is to breathe in and out through the nose. That really triggers the parasympathetic nervous system, which is what we want. It stimulates your feel-good hormones instead of your, oh gosh, I'm suffocating in a mask hormones. Okay? You said this was best to do with the straw and water. For simulating what you feel with singing, it's excellent in the water. You can't inhale through the water. That's the only problem, of course. But for exhaling, for exercising your exhalation musculature, it is excellent. Slow and steady in a deep vat of water will really work out your exhalation musculature, which will help with the feeling of the resistance into the mask as it filters. The inhalation, what I recommend is just inhale through your nose as much as possible, and then incrementally start to increase the resistance on the inhale with the straw, with your lips. You can even inhale through one nostril, sorry, not one nose, because that also we're trying to increase the resistance a little bit at a time. You feel how there's more resistance, so your muscles have to work a little bit harder. But the trick is not to give all the resistance right at first. The trick is to build up to it. And when we slap a mask on our face and walk around all day with it, we've never had to experience that before, so we do not have a high tolerance for it. Okay? I hope that makes sense. This is the first time I've taught this particular thing with the mask, so I'm sorry if it was a little bit confusing.
No, it's great, Crystal.
Okay, in my mind,
That's great information.
it was laid out, and then I ended up going like this just a little bit.
We're with you. We're with you.
Okay, questions. I know we have questions. I know you guys have questions. Don't be shy.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
I just wanted to clarify when when we're inhaling and just like barely covering the end, there shouldn't be any tightness, right? It should just be free.
Yeah, well, do you have a big straw or a little straw?
It's a big straw.
And you're inhaling with a little bit of restriction?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what's happening, see, this is all physics, and physics can be sometimes tricky. If your rib muscles are not working like to pull the air in, then there's an imbalance in pressure and the walls of your throat can get sucked together. That's what I just felt when I did this. It's like suction. And so the strength of the rib muscles have to overcome the strength of the suction. So hopefully that makes sense. So you may have to start with less restriction. If you feel like your throat is really closing off, you may have to start with do more repetitions with less resistance.
Yeah, like the first time we did it, I covered it a lot, and then that was my question. I was like, oh, it was really challenging breathing in, but then I uncovered it after you said to try that, and it was much, much better.
Great. And then you want to work your way back to more resistance. Yeah. Now, just to be really clear, this resistance on the inhale is, yes, it's going to help you for singing to a certain extent, but it's not critical for singing, because usually we are not breathing with resistance, inhaling with resistance on an inhale. But it is going to strengthen your inhalation musculature. So if you are, oh, I don't know, a musical theater performer who has to sing and dance, you want your inhalation musculature to be very strong and agile for when you are operating at high cardio capacity. So it just helps basically condition your entire cardio system.
And then
What other questions do we have?
we have Luke. Luke, go ahead and unmute you. Yeah.
So my school teaches a lot of Linklater Fitzmaurice type
Yes.
work. And so a lot of that's like breathing from the pelvic bowl up through the rest of the body. And I noticed you talked a lot about the rib swinging open, and that's something that I've personally had a lot of trouble with like trying to breathe low and allow the ribs to open up. So I don't know if you have any advice on that.
Yeah, I am not a pelvic floor expert. There are people that are pelvic floor experts. I'm more of a holistic approach, and I know a little bit about Linklater and Fitzmaurice. I am not an expert. I am not certified in those methods. The way that I look at it is if you over focus on any one area, you're going to be out of balance. So today we were looking at getting a little bit of rib movement. And I'm so glad you brought this up, because that is not the only aspect of breathing. I talked a little bit about the shoulders and the chest, and some about the ribs, and a little tiny bit about the abdomen, and microscopic amount about the back. But what you really want to do, hold on a second. Hello, friend. You want to think of your whole thorax as a beautiful, flexible canister. And this is the bottom of the canister, and the diaphragm is the top. So the pelvic floor and the diaphragm are in relationship with each other at all times. The problem becomes when there are some people, and I don't know, but I think that anybody can be in balance or out of balance at any given time. So I don't know where your teachers are on the spectrum, but some people get really obsessed with the pelvic floor and that's everything. We want our pelvic floor to be strong and mobile and flexible and play well with others. Just like we want our ribs to be strong and mobile and flexible and understand their job in the world and play well with others. That's the other thing. A lot of times the different body parts will have a misinterpretation of what their job is. And that's a problem. You know, because then not only, it's like my 11-year-old trying to help me cook dinner sometimes. I'm like, I understand you're very eager. I understand you have a great desire to help, but actually, you're not really very helpful right now. But we are having wonderful quality time together. So does that make sense? Okay. What else we got? Maybe one more question?
Great questions, guys.
Fabulous questions. We have deep thinkers in here and I love it.
Yeah. I don't see any, but I think Rachel just said something in the chat.
I saw that. Yeah. So Rachel, I call this living on the gesture of an inhale. Like a lot of us our default is always this. And I'm literally holding my breath. I'm waiting for my turn. Right? And what we want to do is learn to live on the gesture of an exhale. I am, It's the like mini sigh kind of a feeling where my body is now resting. You can rest at the end of the exhale, you can rest at the end of the inhale, but it's not really restful if you've just inhaled. So I rest and I wait for my turn here. Then I inhale and then I speak. That's a wonderful awareness, Rachel, and it may take you weeks or months to train yourself out of it. But being aware of it is a huge first step. One of the things I say in studio more than anything is if you can feel it, you can fix it. That's a pretty empowering thought if you think about it, right? If you're unaware of it, you can't do anything about it. You're not even aware of it.
Absolutely. That is so awesome, Crystal. This is like gold information.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. This is so great.